No, sorry, Mom, but my husband doesn't want extra mouths to feed, Jennifer said, closing the door in my face while my house still smoldered 3 blocks away. The insurance adjuster handed me a check for $250,000 exactly 6 months later. And that's when I discovered my daughter's landlord was ready to sell. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me take you back to the night everything changed. It was a Tuesday in October when I woke up to the smell of smoke and the sound of sirens already screaming down Maple Street. At 68 years old, I'd been living in the same house for 32 years. The place where I'd raised Jennifer as a single mother after her father ran off to Las Vegas with his secretary. The fire started in the garage where some old Christmas lights had apparently short-circuited. By the time I stumbled outside in my bathrobe, clutching my purse and phone, half the house was already gone. I stood on Mrs. Peterson's lawn, watching 40 years of memories disappear into orange flames that reached toward the stars like desperate prayers. Everything's gone, I whispered to the paramedic who draped a blanket around my shoulders. Everything. The Red Cross put me up in a motel for 3 nights. 3 nights of lying on scratchy sheets, staring at water stains on the ceiling, trying to figure out what came next. That's when I called Jennifer. "Mom, oh my God, I just heard about the fire," she said when she finally answered on the 4th ring. "Are you okay?" "I'm alive," I told her. "But the house is a total loss. The insurance will eventually pay out, but that could take months. I was wondering if I could stay with you and David just until I figure things out. Maybe a week or 2 at most." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When she spoke again, her voice had that careful tone she used when she was about to disappoint me. "Mom, that's really complicated right now. David's been under a lot of stress at work, and we've got the kids' schedules, and honestly, our guest room is being used for his home office." I should have seen it coming. Jennifer had always been good at finding reasons why things wouldn't work out, why she couldn't visit for Christmas, why the grandkids couldn't spend the weekend, why family dinners had to be postponed indefinitely. "I understand," I said quietly. "It's fine, sweetheart. I'll figure something out." But when I showed up at their door the next morning, desperate and homeless, carrying everything I owned in a single suitcase, her response was crystal clear. "No, sorry, Mom, but my husband doesn't want extra mouths to feed." Standing on their front porch in the same clothes I'd worn for 3 days, watching my daughter close the door on me like I was some stranger asking for charity, something cold settled in my chest. Something that would grow stronger every night I spent sleeping in my car. Every morning I woke up with a crick in my neck from the driver's seat, every time I caught my reflection in a gas station bathroom mirror and saw what I'd become. That was 6 months ago. 6 months. 6 months that changed everything about who I thought I was, who my daughter really was, and what I was capable of doing when pushed too far. The first night in my car, I parked outside a 24-hour Walmart and cried until my eyes swelled shut. The second night, I moved to a rest stop and told myself it was temporary. By the 4th night, I'd developed a routine that kept me alive, but slowly killed my spirit. I'd wake up at sunrise before security could hassle me, drive to the McDonald's on 5th Street for coffee and their bathroom, then spend my days at the public library where I could charge my phone and pretend I had somewhere to be. Evenings were for finding a new place to sleep, rotating between different parking lots so no one would notice the gray-haired woman living in a 2018 Honda Civic. The insurance company moved with the speed of continental drift. Every phone call brought new forms to fill out, new documentation they needed, new reasons why my claim couldn't be processed just yet. Meanwhile, autumn turned to winter, and sleeping in my car went from uncomfortable to genuinely dangerous. I bought a sleeping bag from the clearance rack at Target, along with a small cooler and a camping pillow. The car became my entire world. Front seat for eating, back seat for sleeping, trunk for storing the few belongings I'd managed to replace. I learned which gas stations had the cleanest bathrooms, which parking lots had security cameras but absent guards, which librarians would let me stay past closing time if I looked busy enough. Jennifer called exactly once during those 6 months. "Mom, I've been thinking about you," she said on a Tuesday afternoon while I sat in the library pretending to read a magazine. "How are you managing? Did the insurance come through yet?" "Still waiting," I told her, my voice carefully neutral. "Well, I'm sure it'll work out soon. These things always do. Listen, I wanted to tell you that Emma made honor roll again, and Tyler scored his first soccer goal last weekend. I thought you'd want to know. She was giving me updates about my grandchildren like I was some distant relative who sent birthday cards but never visited. Like I hadn't spent every Saturday for 5 years taking them to the park, teaching Emma to braid her hair, showing Tyler how to throw a curveball. That's wonderful, I said. Tell them their grandmother is proud of them. I will. And Mom? I know things are tough right now, but you're strong. You'll figure it out, you always do. Strong. I wanted to laugh. If I was so strong, why was I living in my car while my daughter lived in a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage? If I was so strong, why hadn't I demanded she help me instead of meekly accepting her rejection? But I said, "Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot." After she hung up, I sat in the library staring at my phone for 20 minutes, imagining all the things I should have said. I should have told her I was sleeping in parking lots. I should have told her I was using restaurant bathrooms to wash my face and hands. I should have told her that being homeless at 68 wasn't a character-building exercise, it was a nightmare. Instead, I'd protected her feelings like I always had, like I'd been doing her entire life. That night, parked behind a CVS pharmacy, something shifted inside me. Maybe it was the cold seeping through the sleeping bag, or the way my back ached from another night on the narrow car seat, or simply the accumulated weight of 6 months of humiliation. Whatever it was, I stopped crying and started planning. The insurance adjuster had called that afternoon with good news. My claim was finally approved. $250,000 would be deposited in my account within 10 business days. Enough to start over, certainly. Enough to rent an apartment, buy furniture, rebuild some version of my old life. But as I lay there listening to the wind rattle my windows, a different idea began to take shape. The first thing I did with my insurance money was rent a studio apartment downtown and buy a decent mattress. After 6 months of sleeping in my car, having a real bed felt like the height of luxury, but the apartment was just base camp for what came next. I spent my days at the county courthouse, learning everything I could about property records and real estate law. Jennifer lived on Sycamore Drive in a neighborhood called Hillcrest Estates, a development of modest colonials built in the 1990s where young families started their climb toward prosperity. I'd driven past her house countless times during my car-dwelling months, sometimes parking at the end of the street just to watch her normal life continue without me. What I discovered at the courthouse made my pulse quicken with possibility. The house at 847 Sycamore Drive, Jennifer's house, was owned by something called Morrison Family Trust. A little more digging revealed that Morrison Family Trust was managed by one person. Harold Morrison, age 74, recently moved to an assisted living facility in Phoenix. His daughter had been handling his affairs since he'd been diagnosed with dementia 6 months earlier. I made some calls. Harold's daughter lived in California and wanted nothing to do with managing rental properties from 2,000 miles away. She was eager to sell her father's entire real estate portfolio and simplify her life. "It's such a headache," she told me over the phone. "Dad owned 4 rental houses in your area, and I'm just drowning in maintenance calls and tenant complaints. I need to liquidate everything and focus on his medical care." "I understand completely," I said, sitting in my new apartment with property records spread across my kitchen table. "What would you consider a fair price for the portfolio?" The number she quoted was well within my insurance settlement range. 4 houses, including 847 Sycamore Drive, for $320,000. I could cover it with my settlement plus a small loan. But I didn't want all 4 houses. I only wanted one. "Would you consider selling them individually?" I asked. "I'm specifically interested in the property on Sycamore Drive." "Oh, that's my best rental," she said. "Great tenants, never late with rent, take really good care of the place. I'd hate to lose them, but honestly, if someone wants to buy that house specifically, I could let it go for $90,000. Great tenants who take really good care of the place." She was talking about my daughter. "I'll take it," I said. "When can we close?" 3 weeks later, I became the proud owner of 847 Sycamore Drive. Jennifer had no idea her landlord had changed hands. Her rent checks were still mailed to the same P.O. box, still deposited into the same account. The only difference was that account now belonged to me. I sat in my car outside the house that first day as the new owner, watching Jennifer pull into the driveway after picking the kids up from school. Tyler ran straight to the backyard while Emma helped carry grocery bags. Through the kitchen window, I could see Jennifer starting dinner, moving through the routine of her comfortable life, the life that had no room for her homeless mother. My phone rang. It was Jennifer. "Hi, Mom," she said, sounding distracted. "How are you? Did the insurance finally come through?" I looked at the deed to her house sitting on my passenger seat. "Yes, sweetheart. It finally came through. I'm doing much better now. I'm so glad. I knew you'd figure it out. Listen, I'm making spaghetti and meatballs, Tyler's favorite, so I can't talk long, but I wanted to check in." "That's very thoughtful of you," I said, watching her through the window. "I hope you're all well." "We're good. David got a promotion last month, so things are looking up financially. It's nice to have some breathing room, you know?" Breathing room. While I was sleeping in my car, they were celebrating promotions and financial breathing room in the house I now owned. "I'm happy for you," I said. And strangely, part of me was happy that my daughter felt secure and comfortable, happy that my grandchildren had a stable home. But another part of me, the part that had grown cold and calculating during those 6 months of homelessness, was already planning what came next. The current lease expired in 2 months. Jennifer had been paying $1,200 monthly to Harold Morrison, which I discovered was about $300 below market rate for the neighborhood. A generous landlord helping a young family, I supposed. Harold had probably raised their rent gradually over the years, making it affordable for them to stay. I wouldn't be quite so generous. I consulted with 3 different property management companies to establish fair market value for a 4-bedroom colonial in Hillcrest Estates. The consensus was clear. $30,600 per month was not only reasonable, but slightly conservative given recent improvements to the neighborhood. That gave me 2 options when Jennifer's lease expired. I could offer to renew at market rate, or I could choose not to renew at all and find new tenants. Both options felt like justice after 6 months of sleeping in parking lots. But I wanted Jennifer to have a choice, the same choice she'd given me when I needed help. The letter arrived on official letterhead from Morrison Property Management, the company I'd hired to handle tenant communications. Professional, businesslike, completely impersonal. "Dear Ms. Hamilton, we hope this letter finds you well. We are writing to inform you that the property at 847 Sycamore Drive has recently been transferred to new ownership. All lease terms and conditions remain in effect until the current lease expires on March 31st. We would like to offer you the opportunity to renew your lease for another 12-month term. However, please be aware that a recent market analysis has determined that the rental rate will need to be adjusted to reflect current fair market value. The new monthly rent will be $3,600 beginning April 1st. This represents a significant increase from your current rate, and we understand this may impact your housing decisions. Please inform us of your intention to renew or vacate by March 1st. If you choose to renew, the new lease agreement and first month's rent will be due by March 15th. Sincerely, Morrison Property Management." I hand-delivered the letter myself, driving to Sycamore Drive on a Wednesday afternoon when I knew Jennifer would be home. I slipped it into their mailbox and drove around the corner to wait. My phone rang 18 minutes later. "Mom, you will not believe what just happened," Jennifer said, her voice tight with stress. "Our landlord sold the house, and the new owner wants to triple our rent. $3,600. It's insane." "Oh no," I said, making my voice appropriately concerned. "That's terrible, sweetheart. What are you going to do?" "I have no idea. David's already crunching numbers, but there's no way we can afford $3,600 a month. We're barely managing $1,200. This is going to force us to move, find a cheaper place, probably in a worse neighborhood, with worse schools for the kids." I made sympathetic noises while privately noting that $3,600 wasn't quite triple their current rent. But I understood why it felt that way. When you're struggling financially, any increase feels devastating. "Have you tried talking to the new owner?" I asked. "Maybe they'd be willing to negotiate. We don't even know who the new owner is. Everything goes through this management company now. David called them today, and they basically said the rent increase is non-negotiable. Take it or leave it." "I'm sorry this is happening to your family," I said, and I was sorry. Sorry it had to happen this way. Sorry Jennifer was stressed. Sorry my grandchildren might have to change schools. But not sorry enough to change my mind. Mom, can I ask you something? Jennifer said suddenly. You said the insurance money came through. How much did you get? The question caught me off guard. In 6 months of homelessness, she'd never asked about my finances, never offered to help, or even expressed curiosity about how I was surviving. Now, facing her own financial crisis, she wanted to know what resources I had. Enough to get back on my feet, I said carefully. Because if you have extra, maybe you could help us with a down payment on a house. I know it's a lot to ask, but we're family, and this rent situation is impossible. I sat in my car, staring at the house I now owned, listening to my daughter ask for money she'd never offered to me when I was sleeping in parking lots. The irony was so perfect, it took my breath away. I'll think about it, I said finally. Let me see what my situation is, and get back to you. Thank you, Mom. I knew I could count on you. After she hung up, I drove home to my little studio apartment and opened a bottle of wine. Tomorrow I would call Jennifer back with my answer. Tonight, I would enjoy the sweet taste of having the power to say yes or no. Jennifer called me 3 times the next day before I finally answered. Each voicemail was more desperate than the last. Mom, it's me. Call me back when you get this. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. Mom, please call me. David and I stayed up all night talking about this rent situation. We really need to discuss options. Mom, where are you? I drove by that address you gave me, but the manager said you're not in the system. Are you okay? Please call me back. She'd driven to my apartment complex looking for me. For the first time in 6 months, Jennifer was actively worried about my welfare. It would have been touching if the timing hadn't been so revealing. I called her back from a coffee shop downtown, my voice carefully neutral. Hi, sweetheart. I got your messages. Is everything okay? Mom, thank God. I was starting to panic. Where are you living? I went to Riverside Apartments on Oak Street, but they said they don't have any tenant named Barbara Walsh. I'd given her a fake address when she asked where I was staying. After 6 months of careful independence, I wasn't ready to let her back into my life just because she needed something from me. I'm staying with a friend temporarily while I look for the right place. I lied smoothly. You know how it is. I want to find something perfect, not just settle for the first available apartment. Okay. But Mom, about what we discussed yesterday. The down payment, I said. Yes, I've been thinking about that. And? I could hear the hope in her voice, the desperate edge of someone drowning and suddenly seeing a life preserver. I remembered that feeling intimately from my own experience 6 months earlier. I'm willing to help, I said, and heard her sharp intake of breath. Oh, Mom, thank you. You don't know what this means to us. We've already started looking at houses, and there are some really nice places in Brookfield for around $200,000. If you could help with $20,000 or $30,000 for the down payment. I have conditions, I interrupted. The line went quiet. What kind of conditions? First, I want to meet with you and David together to discuss this properly. No more phone conversations. If I'm going to invest in your family's future, I want to see the commitment from both of you. Of course, that makes sense. Second, I want full transparency about your finances. Income, debts, expenses, everything. If I'm going to help you buy a house, I need to know you can afford the mortgage payments. Okay, yes, we can do that. Third, I said, letting my voice grow cooler. I want an acknowledgement of what happened 6 months ago when I needed help. Another silence. Longer this time. I'm not sure what you mean, Jennifer said carefully. I think you know exactly what I mean. When my house burned down and I asked for somewhere to stay temporarily, you turned me away. Your husband didn't want extra mouths to feed, remember? Mom, I spent 6 months sleeping in my car. Jennifer, 6 months. While you were living comfortably in your rental house, worried about your children's schedules and David's stress levels, I was washing my face in gas station bathrooms and trying to stay warm in a Honda Civic. I could hear her breathing, could practically feel her scrambling for the right response. I didn't know it was that bad, she said finally. You never told me you were sleeping in your car. I thought you'd found an apartment or something. You never asked. I should have asked. You're right. I was dealing with my own problems and I wasn't thinking clearly. David was going through that difficult period at work, and I was overwhelmed with the kids. And now David's been promoted, I said. And you have financial breathing room, but suddenly you need my help. Mom, please, I know I made mistakes, but we're family. Can't we move past this? The word family hit exactly the way she intended. For 6 months, I'd clung to the idea that family meant something, that blood relationships created obligations of care and support. Now I knew better. Family was conditional. Family came with terms and requirements that could change without notice. Yes, I said, we can move past it. But first, we need to understand each other clearly. When you need help, family is supposed to matter. When I needed help, it didn't. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, surprising myself with the bitterness in my voice. Jennifer, fairness went out the window when you closed your door on me. But you know what? You're right that we're family, so I'm going to help you the same way you helped me. What does that mean? It means you'll figure it out, I said. You always do. You're strong. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline and something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. 3 days passed before Jennifer called again. When she did, her voice had changed, less entitled, more careful, like someone who'd finally realized they were walking on thin ice. Mom, I think we need to start over. David and I have been talking, and we understand that we hurt you. We were selfish and thoughtless when you needed us most, and there's no excuse for that. I was sitting in my apartment, looking through property management reports on my rental houses. Yes, houses plural. I'd ended up buying Harold Morrison's entire portfolio after his daughter made me an offer I couldn't refuse. My monthly rental income was now covering my living expenses with money left over for investments. I appreciate you saying that, I told Jennifer. We want to make it right. Make it. Would you be willing to have dinner with us tomorrow night? Just the 4 of us. I'll get a babysitter for the kids. We can talk honestly about everything that happened, and maybe we can figure out how to move forward as a family. I almost admired her strategy. Get me in their home, around their dinner table. Make it personal and emotional, rather than keeping it abstract and financial. Let me see their lives up close. Remember my connection to them. Guilt me into helping. It might have worked 6 months ago. I'll come to dinner, I said, but I choose the restaurant. Neutral ground. Okay, yes. Whatever you prefer. I made reservations at Daniela's, an upscale Italian place downtown where dinner for 3 would cost more than Jennifer's daily food budget. I arrived 15 minutes early and requested a quiet corner table where we could talk privately. Jennifer and David arrived exactly on time, both dressed more formally than I'd seen them in years. David had even worn a tie, though he looked uncomfortable tugging at his collar every few minutes. Mom, Jennifer said, standing to hug me. You look wonderful. I love your hair shorter like that. I'd cut my hair and bought new clothes with my insurance money. Subtle changes, but enough to signal that I was no longer the broken woman who'd been sleeping in her car. I looked like someone with options now, someone whose opinion mattered. Thank you, sweetheart. You both look nice. Please sit. The first half hour was pleasantly awkward. Updates on the grandchildren's activities. David's promotion. My carefully vague living situation. We ordered wine and appetizers like a normal family having a normal dinner. I let them settle into the illusion that this would be easy. Mom, David said finally, Jennifer told me about your conversation the other day. I want you to know that I take full responsibility for what happened when your house burned down. The decision not to help you was mine, not Jennifer's. She wanted to have you stay with us, but I was dealing with work stress and I made a selfish choice. I've regretted it every day since. It was a good speech, practiced, sincere-sounding, designed to absolve Jennifer while making David look like a man who could admit his mistakes. I wondered how long they'd rehearsed it. I appreciate your honesty, I said. That must have been a difficult admission to make. The truth is, Jennifer continued, we've both learned a lot about ourselves over the past 6 months, about what really matters, about how quickly life can change, and how important it is to take care of the people we love. Yes, I agreed. Life can change very quickly. I certainly learned that. David leaned forward. Barbara, we know we have no right to ask for your help after what we did. But if you're willing to give us a chance to prove we've grown from this experience, we'd be grateful for any assistance you could provide with a down payment. And if I can't help you financially? I asked. What then? They exchanged glances. I could see the calculation in their eyes, how honest to be, how much need to reveal. Then we'll figure something out, Jennifer said. Maybe we can find a cheaper rental, or David can look for a second job. We'll make it work somehow, but we won't let money issues damage our relationship again. That's good to hear, I said, because I've decided not to help you with a down payment. The silence stretched while they processed what I'd said. David's face went carefully blank. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. I understand, Jennifer said finally. I deserve that. Do you? I asked. Do you really understand what it means to need help and be turned away by the people who are supposed to care about you? Do you understand what it feels like to have nowhere to go and no one to turn to? No, she whispered. I don't think I do. You will, I said, finishing my wine. Starting April 1st. The confusion on their faces was almost worth 6 months of sleeping in my car. Almost. What happens April 1st? David asked. I signaled the waiter for the check, taking my time to answer. These were the moments I'd been dreaming about during those long nights in parking lots. The moments when I finally held all the cards. Your lease expires March 31st, I said casually. I assume you've made arrangements for housing after that? We're trying to work something out with the new landlord, Jennifer said. The rent increase is impossible, but maybe we can negotiate. No, I said. There will be no negotiation. David frowned. How do you know that? I pulled out my phone and opened my property management app, turning the screen toward them. The photo showed 847 Sycamore Drive, with the caption, Property Overview, Owner, Barbara Walsh. Jennifer stared at the screen for a long time before looking up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not confusion, but something closer to awe. You bought our house. I bought the house you're renting, I corrected. There's a difference. David's face had gone pale. When? About a month after you told me your husband didn't want extra mouths to feed. Funny thing about having money. It gives you options you didn't know existed. So the rent increase. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. Market rate, I said. $3,600 a month is actually quite reasonable for a 4-bedroom colonial in your neighborhood. I had 3 different property management companies verify that price. The waiter brought our check. I paid it with cash, leaving a generous tip. I don't understand, David said. If you have enough money to buy rental properties, why didn't you just rent an apartment 6 months ago instead of asking to stay with us? Because I thought family was supposed to matter more than money, I said. I thought wrong. Jennifer was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Mom, please. I know what we did was terrible, but making us homeless won't fix anything. The kids will have to change schools. We'll lose everything. You won't be homeless, I said. You'll figure something out. Remember? You're strong. You always do. I stood up, gathering my purse and coat. You have until March 31st to decide whether you want to pay market rate or find somewhere else to live. The choice is yours. What if we pay the $3,600? David asked desperately. Would that be enough? Would you forgive us then? I considered the question seriously. Forgiveness isn't something you can rent, David. It's something you earn through actions, not payments. You had 6 months to show me what family meant to you. This is me showing you what it means to me. You can't do this, Jennifer said, standing up suddenly. This is revenge, not justice. You're punishing innocent children for their parents' mistakes. I'm not punishing anyone, I said calmly. I'm a landlord charging market rate for my property. If that feels like punishment to you, perhaps you should consider why. I walked toward the restaurant exit, then turned back. Oh, and Jennifer, if you decide to stay and pay the increased rent, I'll need first month, last month, and security deposit by March 15th. That's standard procedure for all my tenants. I left them sitting at the table, knowing they were doing the math. $10 to $800 up front to stay in the house, plus $3,600 every month after that. On David's salary, even with his promotion, it would be financially impossible. Driving home to my apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Complete control over my own life. For 6 months, I'd been at the mercy of other people's decisions. Insurance companies, motel clerks, restaurant managers who decided whether to let me use their bathrooms. Now I was the one making decisions. Now other people were at my mercy. And I was discovering I didn't have much. The real estate market in our area was brutal for renters, especially families with children and pets looking for something they could afford on short notice. I knew this because I'd been monitoring rental prices for months as part of my property investment strategy. Jennifer and David would find places available immediately. The rundown duplex on the wrong side of town where sirens wailed all night. The overpriced apartments with no yards where Emma and Tyler would spend their time indoors. The week-to-week motels that charged monthly rates higher than their current mortgage. They'd also find plenty of nice places with waiting lists 6 months long, or income requirements they couldn't meet, or landlords who preferred tenants without children. By mid-February, Jennifer was calling me twice a week with updates on their housing search. Each call more desperate than the last. "Mom, we found a 3-bedroom in Brookfield, but they want first month, last month, and 2 months security deposit. That's $8,400 up front, and we just don't have that kind of cash available." "That's unfortunate," I said, not mentioning that I could write them a check for $8,400 without affecting my monthly budget. "There's a place in Riverside that would work, but it's next to a construction site, and Emma's allergic to all the dust and noise." "Children are resilient," I said. "I'm sure she'd adapt." "We looked at a duplex on Grant Street, but it's in such a bad neighborhood. I don't feel safe having the kids walk to school there." "Perhaps you could drive them." Each conversation followed the same pattern. Jennifer describing their impossible situation, me offering practical but useless suggestions, neither of us acknowledging the obvious solution. I had the power to fix their problem with a single phone call to Morrison Property Management. All I had to do was authorize a rent reduction or agree to let them stay at their current rate. I didn't make that call. Instead, I drove past Sycamore Drive every few days, watching their increasingly frantic activity. A for sale sign appeared in their yard, then disappeared 2 days later. Moving boxes appeared on their porch, then went back inside. I saw David loading their cars with belongings one weekend, then unpacking everything again on Sunday night. They were getting desperate, which meant they were getting careless. On February 28th, Jennifer called with a proposition I'd been expecting for weeks. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I want you to promise you'll at least consider it before saying no." "I'm listening. What if we paid you back?" "Paid me back for what?" "For letting us stay at the old rent." "What if we treated it like a loan? You let us stay at $1,200 a month, and we pay you the difference, $2,400, whenever we can. With interest, if you want." It was actually a reasonable proposal from someone who understood their landlord was their estranged mother rather than a faceless corporation. Jennifer was finally acknowledging our real relationship instead of hiding behind the fiction of professional property management. "How long would this loan arrangement last?" I asked. "I don't know. A few years, maybe, until David gets another promotion or the kids are older and I can go back to work full-time. We just need some breathing room to get back on our feet financially." Breathing room. The same phrase she'd used 6 months earlier when describing their improved finances after David's promotion. While I was sleeping in my car, they'd been enjoying breathing room. "Let me think about it," I said. "Thank you, Mom. I know it's a lot to ask, but..." "It is a lot to ask," I agreed, "especially from someone whose husband didn't want extra mouths to feed. Mom, please don't. I'll give you my answer tomorrow." I hung up and sat in my apartment looking at my financial statements. The rental properties were generating more income than I needed to live comfortably. My insurance settlement was growing steadily in conservative investments. I had more money now than at any point in my life, certainly enough to be generous with my only daughter. But generosity hadn't been David's first instinct when I needed help. Family loyalty hadn't motivated Jennifer to offer me even temporary shelter. They'd chosen their own comfort and convenience over my welfare, and they'd done it without hesitation. Now they wanted me to choose their welfare over my own sense of justice. That night, I drafted 2 different responses to Jennifer's proposal. One was generous and forgiving, a yes that would repair our relationship and probably make me feel better about myself. The other was honest about my feelings and firm about my boundaries. In the morning, I would have to decide which version of myself I wanted to be. I chose honesty. "Jennifer, I've thought carefully about your proposal, and my answer is no. You and David will need to find other arrangements by March 31st. The silence on the phone lasted so long, I wondered if she'd hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow with shock. "You're really going to let your own grandchildren become homeless?" "Your children won't be homeless any more than I was homeless," I said. "You'll find somewhere for them to live, just like I did." Sleeping in parking lots isn't finding somewhere to live. Mom, it's surviving. Yes, I agreed. It is. And you're resourceful people. You'll figure out how to survive, and then you'll figure out how to rebuild. Just like I did. This is insane. David's voice suddenly came through the phone. Barbara, this is David. Jennifer put you on speaker because I wanted to talk to you directly. Hello, David. What you're doing to our family is cruel and vindictive. I understand you're angry about what happened when your house burned down, but destroying our children's stability won't change the past. I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. I'm operating a rental property business according to standard market practices. If that feels cruel to you, perhaps you should examine why standard business practices seem vindictive when they're applied to your family. Because you're not really our landlord, Jennifer said, her voice breaking. You're my mother, and mothers don't evict their own children. Children don't abandon their parents either, I replied. But here we are. So this is permanent? David asked. No matter what we do, no matter how we apologize, you'll never forgive us? The question hit deeper than I expected. Was this permanent? Was I committed to estrangement from my only daughter and grandchildren forever? Or was I simply establishing boundaries that hadn't existed before? Forgiveness and consequences are different things, I said finally. I can forgive you for making selfish choices while still requiring you to face the results of those choices. What results? Jennifer demanded. We said we were sorry. We admitted we were wrong. What more do you want from us? What did I want? For 6 months, I'd focused on having the power to say no to Jennifer the way she'd said no to me. But power without purpose was just cruelty. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be cruel. I want you to understand what it means to need help, I said. Really need it, desperately need it, the way I needed it 6 months ago. I want you to experience what it feels like when the people who are supposed to care about you choose not to care. And then what? David asked. When we've suffered enough to satisfy you, then what happens? Then maybe we'll have a foundation to build a real relationship on, I said. One based on mutual understanding instead of one-sided obligation. This is crazy, Jennifer said. You're talking like some kind of therapist instead of my mother. I'm talking like someone who spent 6 months learning hard truths about family loyalty. You can call it crazy if you want, but it won't change your lease expiration date. I could hear them whispering to each other, probably strategizing their next approach. Mom, Jennifer said, her voice suddenly softer. What if we brought the kids to see you? Emma's been asking about her grandmother. She misses you. It was a low blow, using my grandchildren as emotional leverage. It was also effective. I hadn't seen Emma and Tyler since before the fire, and I missed them with an ache that kept me awake some nights. The children are welcome to visit me any time, I said. My relationship with them doesn't depend on where you live. But it does depend on their stability, David said. If we're constantly moving, if they're changing schools every few months because we can't afford stable housing, how do you think that affects them? He had a point. My desire for justice was putting my grandchildren at risk for consequences they didn't deserve. But giving in to emotional blackmail now would establish a pattern I couldn't live with. Those are choices you'll have to make as their parents, I said. Just like the choice you made when you decided David didn't want extra mouths to feed. That was different. No, I interrupted. It wasn't. It was a family decision that affected everyone, made by the people with power in the situation. Just like this is. The call ended with them hanging up on me, probably to have a crisis meeting about their options. I sat in my apartment afterward, feeling simultaneously righteous and terrible, powerful and empty. Tomorrow was March 1st. They had 30 days to figure out their next move, and I had 30 days to decide if this was really the person I wanted to become. On March 15th, Jennifer did something I didn't expect. She showed up at my apartment building with Emma and Tyler, both carrying handmade cards and nervous smiles. Grandma! Emma ran to hug me, while Tyler hung back shyly. Mommy said we could visit you at your new place. I knelt down to Emma's level, my heart breaking at how much she'd grown in 6 months. I've missed you so much, sweetheart. Both of you. Tyler eventually warmed up enough for a hug, and I spent an hour listening to their stories about school and friends and the soccer goals Tyler had scored since I'd last seen him. Jennifer sat quietly in my small living room, letting me reconnect with my grandchildren without interference. When the kids got distracted playing games on Jennifer's phone, she finally spoke. They don't know about the housing situation yet. We didn't want to worry them until we knew for sure what was happening. That's probably wise. David found a job in Portland. His company has an office there, and they're willing to transfer him. It pays about the same, but the cost of living is lower. We could afford a nice place there, good schools for the kids. Portland was 800 miles away, far enough to start over completely, far enough that spontaneous visits with grandchildren would be impossible. When would you leave? I asked. Next week. The company is paying for the move, and David's brother lives there, so we'd have family nearby while we get settled. I watched Tyler showing Emma something on the phone, their heads bent together in concentration. My grandchildren, who'd been a daily presence in my life for years, would become occasional voices on phone calls and faces on video screens. How do you feel about that? I asked Jennifer. Relieved, mostly. Portland feels like a fresh start. No more stress about rent or landlord problems. She paused. And honestly, no more guilt about what we did to you. Running away doesn't eliminate guilt. No, but it makes it easier to live with. She looked around my apartment. You've done well for yourself. This is nice. Thank you. I keep wondering how things might have been different if we'd made different choices back in October. I wondered the same thing. If Jennifer had opened her door to me 6 months ago, would I have been content to remain the grateful mother dependent on my daughter's generosity and goodwill? Would I have ever discovered my own capacity for independence and financial success? Different choices create different consequences, I said, not necessarily better ones. Do you really believe that? Do you think we're all better off this way? I watched my grandchildren playing together, oblivious to the adult complexities reshaping their world, and tried to give Jennifer an honest answer. I think we're all more honest this way. 6 months ago, I believed family meant unconditional support. You believed it meant occasional obligation when convenient. Now we both know where we actually stand. And where do we stand? We stand wherever we choose to stand, I said. Geography doesn't change that. Jennifer called Emma and Tyler over. Time to go, guys. Say goodbye to Grandma. More hugs, more promises to call and visit, more hearts breaking quietly while maintaining cheerful faces for the children's sake. At the door, Jennifer turned back. Mom, I want you to know that I understand why you did this. I don't like it, and I don't think it was necessary, but I understand it. Good. Understanding is more important than liking. Will you be okay? Living alone, I mean. Will you be happy? I thought about my new life. The rental properties, the financial independence, the quiet apartment that belonged entirely to me, the freedom to make choices based on my own needs rather than other people's expectations. I'll be fine, I said. I always am. After they left, I sat in my apartment looking at the drawings Emma and Tyler had made for me. Stick figures labeled Grandma and Emma and Tyler under a smiling sun and a house with flowers in the garden. The house in the drawing looked nothing like 847 Sycamore Drive. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Jennifer with photos of their new house in Portland, a cheerful blue colonial with a big backyard and a tire swing hanging from an old oak tree. The kids looked happy in the pictures, already making friends with neighborhood children. We're settling in well. Kids love their new school. David's job is going great. Thank you for forcing us to make this move. I think we needed it more than we realized. I stared at that message for a long time. Jennifer was thanking me for evicting her family, crediting me with pushing them toward a better life. It was either remarkable emotional maturity or skillful manipulation designed to make me feel better about my choices. Probably both. I typed and deleted several responses before settling on, I'm glad you're happy. Send more pictures when you can. 6 months after my house burned down, I owned 4 rental properties, had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life, and had successfully taught my daughter a lesson about consequences and family loyalty. I'd also lost daily access to my grandchildren and any illusion that family relationships could survive everything. Some victories, I was learning, cost more than defeats. But as I sat in my apartment that belonged entirely to me, in a life I'd built entirely through my own choices, I couldn't bring myself to regret the fire that had started it all. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is discovering how strong you are when everything burns down. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.